Hello, I'm Father Robert Lauder, professor of philosophy at St. John's University, a priest of the Diocese of Brooklyn. As part of our Catholic novel series today, we're going to deal with, this novel, I think I can call it a classic, The Diary of a Country Priest by Georges Bernanos. This is the favorite novel among many, many priests. Many priests I know think this is the best novel ever written about a priest. Personally, I agree this is a classic. I like Graham Greene's The Power and the Glory, but I don't want to detract at all from this novel, okay? This was made into a film. It was directed by Robert Bresson, who is one of the great French directors. And André Bazin, who is one of the great French movie critics, said about the film, Diary of a Country Priest, for the first time in the history of cinema, we have a phenomenology of grace, a phenomenology of salvation. So many think the movie Diary of a Country Priest is the greatest religious film ever made. So if you read the book first. If you do read it, then you might want to watch the film. You know, I've taught this book at least for 15 years. And only today it struck me how brilliant it is to make it a diary. You know, you could have told this priest's story in 50 different ways. But to do it through a diary, I think, is really special. Why? Because it gives us a direct entrance into the consciousness of the priest. Bernanos has even included pages where the priest has crossed out material. So very early on in the novel, we discover the priest has some kind of stomach problem, and that all he can eat are bread and wine. And of course, the Eucharistic symbol is right there. This is probably within the first 3 or 4 pages. The great cross that this priest has, at least for most of the novel, is to be misunderstood. He is completely committed to Christ. He is completely innocent. He is completely dedicated. And yet, almost everyone, even his fellow priests, misunderstand him. When it's discovered that he's living basically on wine, some of the people think he's an alcoholic. Of course, he isn't. I won't call him a spiritual director, but an older priest who's trying to give him advice is often quite critical of him. But I think as you get through certainly when you finish the novel, you realize that Bernanos is depicting a saint. I mean, that this man is a saint. So the whole novel is a diary, except for 1 or 2 pages at the end. Now, once again, I don't want to tell you how the novel ends, but I will tell you 2 events in the novel. For my reading, the 2 most important events. The first one is this. A classmate of the priest has left the priesthood. And the initial image you have of the main character, the curé, is he would be shocked by this. He would be terribly disappointed by this. He might even refuse to bother with this classmate of his who had left the priesthood. If you kind of overemphasize or even misunderstand, even if you misunderstand the main character's piety, you might think that. But you wouldn't be misunderstanding it, because he goes to visit this priest, and he talks to the woman that the priest is living with him, and he says to her, you know, did you marry? Because there's a church law, if the priest had married, he would not have been able to come back to the priesthood, to resume his function as a priest. And she says no, because of him. If he changed his mind, I don't want to be in his way. So the priest, and I guess like all saints, just has this sense. Maybe it's the Holy Spirit inspiring him. He says the right word. His presence is redemptive for the priest who has left the priesthood. His presence is redemptive for the priest, the woman the priest is living with, and his presence is redemptive throughout the novel. So that's one event. The second event is this. There is a person in his parish, the countess, who has lost her young son. He's died very, very early. And she has closed herself off from her husband, from her daughter, and basically from everyone. She is really angry at God. She's almost a recluse. And the young priest, because he's dealing with a daughter and sees that the relationship with the mother is a disaster, goes to see the mother. It's the most dramatic scene in the novel. It's a very dramatic scene in the movie, and it's probably one of the most dramatic scenes in any Catholic novel. he confronts her. And first of all, she's ready to dismiss him. He's a child. What does he know? As a matter of fact, she says at one point, he says something. She says, you got that out of a book. You don't have the experience to be able to say that from your own experience. So she's kind of looking down at him. But then as goodness confronts evil, as grace confronts sin, he just spiritually overpowers her and gets her to say in Our Father, especially the words, thy will be done. And he says to her, if you continue to live the way you're living, you miss your son now, but if you continue to live this way, you'll be closing yourself off from him for all eternity. And he reminds her that, we don't believe in some distant God, some God who is up in heaven watching everything. We believe in a God who has become one of us. We believe in the incarnation. I tell you, it's just a great scene. Now, let me warn you. I don't know, anyone's reading habit here, but it may take a little while to get into the novel. A theologian I know told me that he started the novel 3 times and couldn't get into it. But then, and I don't know what the time span was. This is probably over a couple of years, I guess. But he tried again, and once he got into it, he could not put it down. And I'm pretty sure that he thinks this is his favorite novel about a priest, and he probably thinks it is the best novel about a priest. So there are layers and layers of meaning here. Let me just get back to the notion that he's made it a diary. Suppose you try to picture yourself, you're going to make a film of a diary. How are you going to do that? Films are all visual. How are you going to do it? Well, the way Bresson does it is analogous to the way Bernanos does it. So Bernanos does it, the whole book is the diary, all right, except for these 1 or 2 pages. And what Bresson does in the movie is show the writing in the diary. For example, today I went to see my spiritual director. We talked about, and then he shows the meeting between them. So it really does work. So the more I think about it, I think that to ask the reader to enter the conscience of a character whom obviously Bernanos thinks is a saint is quite daring. I mean, you really have to be a good writer, and you have to be, I think, pretty comfortable with Catholic dogma and with the mystery of the priesthood. And of course, Bernanos is not a priest, he's a layman. He was a layman. That he was able to do this and pull it off and write a novel that has spoken over the years to so many priests. There's an American novel that I think that succeeds in doing that. Edwin O'Connor's The Edge of Sadness. I don't know whether any of you read it, but it's a very good Catholic novel. It's a little longer than the novels we've been dealing with in this series. But I remember when I read it, I didn't think a layman could enter into the mind of a priest so well. So Edwin O'Connor must have known a lot of priests, because he depicts these priests very, very, very well. I think the great danger for a layman, at least years ago, would be to make the priest too pious, too unreal, maybe walking around saying things like thou and thee, okay? But O'Connor got it down. Now, I don't think I could say O'Connor's book is a classic, but Bernanos got it down really cold. Bernanos has other novels. I've read them. I think this is his masterwork. How does it compare with some of the other novels we've done? Well, it compares you can make a very easy comparison with The Power and the Glory, and I think with, the more I think about it, you could probably compare it to all of them. In every single Catholic novel, what you've got is a story of grace. And I've come to believe the story is not only about the characters in the novel, the story is about each and every one of us. This is the great gift that great literature is to us. A Catholic novel sheds light on God, but it also sheds light on us. I believe in one of these sessions I told you, when I tried to promote the course based on a Catholic novel in Catholic high schools and in Catholic universities, I often ran into disinterest. And the way I read that disinterest was this, that the people who weren't interested thought this was too parochial. this is really too narrow. I remember one teacher said to me, well, you know, we cover all the important stuff with Hemingway, with Faulkner, with F. Scott Fitzgerald, and please don't misunderstand me, this is great. You know, these are considered great writers. But my view of a Catholic novel is not that it's narrow, but that it's broader and deeper than any other type of a novel. I mean, if it's good, if it's well written, it's broader and deeper. Why? Because it's entering into the mystery of God and the mystery of our relationship with God. So I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. I have found the reading of Catholic novels inspiring. You know, I'll find out when I stand before God whether this is right or not, but it seems to me that often I've gotten as much out of a Catholic novel as I have gotten out of some book that is called a spiritual classic. Let me share one more anecdote with you. When I started reading these novels, I was in senior year in high school. And when I graduated from high school, I then continued to read. And I'm a person who, when I find a book I like to lend it to friends. And I remember one summer, I was lending Graham Greene's novels out to several people. The first thing that struck me was all of these people had gone to a Catholic college, and none of them had ever read any of these novels. That was the first thing that struck me. The second thing that struck me was universally, they were all enthusiastic about the novels and wanted to read more. So I know I said this previously in this series, we've got a treasure that's hidden in a field, and I'm calling that treasure the Catholic novel. And if this series provokes people to take a look at these novels, I'll think it is extremely successful and it's done something what I think is extremely important. You and I live in a secular culture. We need all the symbols and hints and signs of our faith that we can get in literature or in film or on the stage or in poetry or even in Catholic periodicals. We need those things. The 10-minute homily on Sunday is not going to do the trick, okay? So I'm not going to beg you, but I'm going to urge you to take a look at some of these books. And you know, don't hesitate to get in touch. If you're disappointed, blame me, okay? But I have no doubt you will not be disappointed. Start with any one of them, and then then go right through the others. I think you'll have the experience of reading the best literature you've read in a long, long time. I'm very confident about that.